Hi, and welcome to the Becoming Trauma-Informed podcast, where we help you understand how your past painful experiences are affecting your current reality and how you can shift those so you can create your desired future. I'm Dr. Lee, and both myself and our team at the Institute for Trauma and Psychological Safety are excited to support you on your journey. We talk about all the things on this podcast. No topic gets left uncovered. So, extending a content warning to you before we get started. If you notice yourself getting activated while listening, invitation to take care of yourself and to pause, skip ahead a bit, or just check out another episode. Let's dive in. Hey y'all, welcome to this week's episode. I'm really excited to talk about failure. You might be like, what? Maybe this episode feels extra oofy for you because maybe failure is something that just feels really scary. Honestly, in the work that I do and the thousands of people that I have talked with and coached and served, this is probably one of the things that prevents people from living a life that feels good for them most often. The idea of failing and the idea that we as humans can be failures is really terrifying. And for those of us who have a lot of past painful experiences where what we learned about ourselves is that we aren't good at something, that we are failures, where we have personalized and characterized our failures as part of who we are, as opposed to just things that we've done. If you've had that experience where being a failure is part of your identity, and not in a positive way, then the idea of failing can feel really terrifying, can feel unsafe to you because it might come along with thoughts or fears of losing love, safety, and belonging from the people who you love or being negatively viewed. And so I wanted to just talk through how I help my clients reframe their thoughts around failure, how I have personally reframed my thoughts around failure, and give you some tangible, practical things that you can do so that you can start going after what you want more often without the fear of failure. So the first thing is, how do you define failure? Do you define failure and making mistakes and not doing something right? Do you define that as part of who you are? If you fail, what does it mean about you? Right? So getting a clearer idea of what it means to fail and what it means to be a failure in your brain and in your nervous system is key. So for some people, for me, the work that I've done over the last several years, there are most places in my life now, I am not afraid to fail because what I have decided and what I have reconditioned my brain and my nervous system to understand is that if we're not failing, we're likely not making progress. And this was something that, again, was a huge mindset shift for me because I grew up thinking that failure was one of the worst things that I could experience, and being a failure was one of the worst things that I could be. And honestly, it led me to a lot of really not great behavior patterns because, I thought that I was a failure when it came to money, and I thought that I was a failure when it came to specific parts of my intimate relationship. And so when you think you are a failure, that leads you to fail often as a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And when you think you are a failure and you identify with being a failure as being bad, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of shame and guilt and feeling bad about yourself. It's very hard to dig yourself out of that hole when the underlying belief is, when I fail, that confirms the fact that I am a failure. And so I'm never going to be good at this. I'm never going to get to where I want to go. I'm never going to be able to overcome this. So the first thing is can we separate your mistakes from your character? Can we separate your mistakes from your character? Can we see how really the only way that you truly become a failure is if you refuse to fail? And I get that that sounds kind of confusing. It's a little oxymoronic, right? But the only way that you actually are a failure, meaning that you are somebody who doesn't do what they set out to do in general, is if you never try to do those things, right? What is so fascinating about this is that the way that you avoid feeling like a failure is by trying and likely making mistakes and failing. There's a book that I'm currently in the middle of reading that kind of inspired this, and plus some personal stuff that's going on in my life right now. And it's called Failing Forward by John Maxwell, famous personal development author. And he was talking about, like, he gives his clients goals of, I want you to go make 50 mistakes this week. Or I want you to go fail 100 times. I want you to go try something that you are inherently bad at. And just like practice doing this. And he actually has this example in his book of this study that they did in a classroom where they split the students into two groups. In the one group, the professor told the students, I'm going to grade you on the quantity of your work. I'm going to weigh the amount of paper that you have written on, that you have adequately written on, and at the end of the semester. And 50 pounds gets an A, 40 pounds gets a B, 30 pounds gets a C, and so on. And then the other half of the class, he said, I'm going to grade you on the quality of your work. So even if you only submit one essay, that's fine, but I'm going to grade you on the quality. And what they found when the professor went through those quantity papers and pulled out the best papers from each student, and then when he graded the quality papers, the students who did quantity, who were getting graded on quantity, actually had better quality papers than the students who were focused on quality. Now, why? Because the students who were focused on quantity were practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing and failing. And the students who were focused on quality were like, okay, this just has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. How do I get it to be perfect? And this is something that I think a lot of people don't understand. And it's why I actually have the term, and I say it to my kids all the time. I say it to myself. I say it to anyone who will listen to me. Done, not perfect. And here's why. If I consistently am trying and putting in effort and failing 20 to 30% of the time, let's even say I'm failing 50% of the time, I am setting a goal, setting an outcome that I'd like to achieve, going after it, and then 50% of the time I'm hitting that outcome and 50% of the time I'm not hitting that outcome. Okay, so I'm 50% successful. Versus if I have a goal and I decide it has to be done perfectly. In order to hit this outcome, it has to be done perfectly. The likelihood that I'm going to hit that is really low, right? The likelihood I'm going to hit that is really low. So 0% of 100 is 0, right? 50% of 100 is 50. So would I rather have 50% success or 0% success? So really looking at, if you are defining failure as bad, if you are defining failure as problematic, if you are saying that failure means something negative about you versus like, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. Let me evaluate. Let me try again. Right? And if you're doing that, the likelihood that you're actually taking action is so much lower than, these quantity students who are like, screw it. Like, let me keep trying and keep experimenting and keep seeing what works. Another example of this is in business, right? So we just had a launch for our trauma-informed, psychologically safe certification program. And last year, this launch was, I can't remember exactly how much we made, but probably it was above $100,000, okay? In sales. That's still being collected. This year, the launch total was $72,000. And I could look at that and be like, oh, I'm a failure. I promoted it for the same amount of time. We should be growing. If I'm not increasing my numbers every single time, it means something's wrong with me. I failed. I'm a failure. Like, first of all, how disrespectful to myself, to the work that I put in, to my team who worked on this, to all the humans who signed up and paid. How disrespectful. Like, the audacity of me to see that as a failure, right? Number one. And number two, I guess I should say the audacity for me to see that as bad, right? $72,000, 20 plus humans, right? That that's just not okay. Like, that's not helpful. And also, what else am I making this mean about me? Because here's the thing. Is the amount of money that we made for this launch less? Yes. Does that mean that this launch is a failure? No. And there's several ways in which it wasn't a failure. Number one, we launched this using a very simple launch plan that required much less effort this round than it did last round. So the fact that we hit 75% of what we did last round with like probably 33% of the effort we put in the round before it, that's pretty cool. The other ways that this wasn't a failure is that we learned some things. We learned that we need to grow our audience more before we launch next time. The third thing that we learned is that we had people come back through, which was really exciting. It was really exciting to have people want to come back through for a second round. We had, I think, 5 or 6 people do that. So there were lots of things that we learned. And this is the thing about what you make failure mean. Do you make failure mean that you're a horrible human that shouldn't have tried the thing in the first place? Or do you make failure mean, oh, let me look what I can learn from this so that next time when I try again, I can hopefully have more of the outcome that I'm looking for. Okay? So, first piece. Second piece is like feeling your feelings around when things don't go the way that you thought they were going to, or that you feel like you have failed. Here's the thing about feeling your feelings, okay? Feeling your feelings around failure versus deciding what failure means are two separate things, okay? Because I have a logical, rational part to my brain, and I have an emotional, irrational part to my brain, to my nervous system. And both of those parts get to be seen and get to have their moment, okay? So, can I feel sad about the fact that this launch didn't go the way that I thought it was going to? Yes. Can I feel disappointed? Can I feel angry? Can I feel confused? Can I feel any of those things? Sure. And I'm not going to make myself wrong for having those feelings. I'm going to let those feelings come in and I'm going to feel them. I'm going to feel sad. I'm going to feel frustrated. I'm going to feel confused. I'm going to let myself actually have those feelings. I'm going to process through them in my journal. I'm going to swamp them or vent them out with my trusted, coach or my support system. I'm going to feel those feelings, because if I don't let myself feel those feelings and I just go, oh, no, it's fine. Yeah, we failed. And it's like, it's fine. It's totally cool. And I Pollyanna it and I like toxic positivity it, right? Love and light it. Those feelings are still there. And that's a form of self-invalidation. It's a form of going, well, these feelings don't get to be valid because I want to be super positive about this. And so what we're not going to do anymore when we make a mistake or when we fail is we're going to let ourselves feel our feelings. And once we have felt our feelings, we are not going to make it mean something negative about our personality and our character. And we are going to look for the lessons, and we are going to look for, okay, cool, that experiment didn't work. That project didn't work, or like pieces and parts of it worked, but oh, we need to tweak this, or oh, we need to try this next, or oh, this unexpected thing happened. And like, actually, it's good that it didn't go the way we thought it would, because if it did, that actually wouldn't have worked out. And so how brilliant that what we thought would have been a failure is actually a success, right? So you get to come back to the logical part of it after you validated your feelings of like, man, I had some expectations and like that didn't go the way that I wanted it to, or that I thought it was going to. And I have feelings. So you're going to feel your feelings, and then you're going to not make your feelings mean anything about yourself. And you're not going to make your failure mean anything about yourself. Okay? And then here's the next piece. You're going to get irrationally rational. Third step. I know, right? What does that mean? Irrationally rational. I like to sum it up in a mantra that I use. Everything I do works, even when it doesn't. Everything I do works out for me, even when it doesn't work. Now you might be hearing that and going, what does that mean, Lee? What it means is I can't see the future. I don't have a crystal ball. And if I decide that every failure gets me closer to the outcomes that are meant for me, if I decide that everything works out, maybe not initially, but eventually, if I come at life with that, I am going to make incremental progress as I fail forward. I'm going to fail forward. I'm going to fail forward. There's this story, and I don't know who says it, so I don't know where it comes from, but I believe it's an old Asian story. So if anyone actually knows, feel free to send me a message. It's a story of a man who's a farmer, and he has one son and a horse. Okay. And one day, this man's horse runs away. And the horse is what he uses to help plow his farm. And all the villagers say, oh my gosh, what horrible luck. And the man says, we'll see. And so the man sends his son out to find the horse. And his son comes back the next day with 2 horses. And he says, yeah, I found this other horse with our horse. And all the villagers say, oh my goodness, what amazing luck. Now you have 2 horses. And the old man says, we'll see. The next day, the son is out training the second horse, breaking the second horse in, and he falls and breaks his leg. And all the villagers say to the man, oh, what horrible luck. Now your son can't help you with your farm. What are you going to do? And he says, we'll see. And the day after that, the state comes by and says, hey, we're going to war, and we're taking all firstborn sons with us that are healthy. And the son has a broken leg, so he can't go. And all the villagers say, oh my gosh, what fortuitous luck that your son isn't going to go and have to fight. And the old man says, we'll see. Now, what's the point of that story? The point of that story is you can't see what's going to happen next. And so a lot of times as humans, we like to do this thing where we pretend that we're like omnipotent and we know what's going to happen and we know what's good for us and we know what's bad for us. And yes, to a point we do. And we have no idea what's going to work out for us in the future. I can think of so many times in my life that looked like failures that a year or 2 later, I was like, oh, that wasn't a failure. Or like, yeah, it was a failure, but it brought me blessings. It brought me goodness. And the reason I was able to get goodness out of that failure is because I didn't give up. So a lot of y'all know that I used to be a nurse practitioner at the bedside. I had been working in bone marrow transplant for 2 years and really, really thought that I wanted to be in critical care. And when I was working in bone marrow transplant, the head of the NPs in the cancer hospital where I was working was like, yeah, we really actually would love for you to be the lead when we open up this new acute care, critical care division when we build our new hospital. And I was so excited. And I remember waiting to hear. And one of my colleagues said, oh yeah, I got hired into the critical care. And I was like, that's so weird. Why haven't I heard anything? And I went to my boss's boss, who was the head of this thing. And she said, hey, yeah, we got to have a meeting. And I went in her office and she said, yeah. So despite my best efforts, like you got blocked for this position. And I was like blindsided. I was like, why? She said, yeah, one of the people who's making the decisions really does not like you. It's not exactly how she said it, but she was very honest with me. She's like, I'm going to tell you something. It's going to be really hard to hear. She's like, yep, she doesn't like you. She does not want you working for her. And I was crushed. Like, I started crying in the office. I was crushed. And luckily, this woman was a really great mentor to me. And she's like, it's cool. We're going to figure this out. It's all good. And I didn't go to the ICU. I didn't go to the ICU. I didn't go to this critical care. I didn't lead anything. I was like, went back with my tail tucked between my legs. A couple years later, had the opportunity to work on the critical care team and spent 10 weeks in orientation to very quickly realize this is not the place for me. And I've told this story in other places, but just for the sake of today's podcast, realized very quickly, not the place for me. What is so fascinating is that going there after 2 years, 3 years of really wanting to work there and getting the opportunity and being like, yes, I'm finally getting to do this thing. I'm failing forward. And then feeling like I failed again because I could not, my nervous system could not handle working in that place. I was like, oh my gosh, now I've confirmed everything that they thought, that I didn't belong here, that this wasn't the right place for me. And that ended up leading to the best job that I ever had in the bedside, because that same mentor from years ago said, hey, we're actually, now that you have this critical care experience over the last 3 months, we're starting this new nocturnal position. And we wanted somebody who understands both the bone marrow transplant, hematology side, and the ICU side, and that you are now the perfect person for this. So you want to do it? You want to head up this thing? And I ended up heading up a division that now has grown exponentially and really changing the way that nurse practitioners were used in the hospital system that I was in, and being a part of something really, really big. And never would have had that opportunity if the experience that I wanted wasn't blocked. And then if I hadn't admitted defeat and failure in this other place. And so just saying, like, everything I did worked even though it didn't feel like it was working. Everything I did worked out even though it didn't work. And I have more stories of that in business. But like, just recognizing that when things don't go your way, instead of going, oh my gosh, this is the end, I shouldn't have tried this, this isn't what I should be doing, instead going, okay, we'll see. What do I do now? What does this mean? What's my next step? And so this goes to the fourth piece of deciding how you are going to handle failure when it happens. Deciding, and notice I didn't say if it happens, when it happens. Getting excited about the fact that you are going to try to fail every day moving forward for the rest of your life. Getting excited around failing. I'm personally doing this right now. I am working on my public speaking portion of my career and getting a lot more opportunities to speak publicly. And it is really scary for me. It is the thing that I love to do more than probably anything in this world other than be with my family, is to public speak. And it's terrifying also to pitch myself to places to public speak. I mean, I just shared with you experiences of like thinking that I'm going to get things and having people say, yeah, we don't like you. That's happened many times to me in my life. I have one of those personalities that people don't typically feel meh about me. They typically really like me, or they really don't. And that is something that I have had to like really come to terms with over my life. If anyone in here follows human design, I'm a 5/1 profile. And so that heretic in that profile, people see themselves in me. And if I'm reflecting back to you something in yourself that you don't like, you're going to hate me. Versus if I'm reflecting back to you a part of yourself that you really want to see, like you're going to want to come learn from me. And that's something that, like I said, really took me out when I was younger. And so when people would tell me that they didn't like me, when people would decide they didn't want to be in my space anymore, when people would say very nasty things about me, like a lot of people would feel those failures and be like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to keep trying to put myself in the public sphere. I'm not going to keep trying to make friends. I'm not going to keep trying to advance in my career. I'm just going to like put my head down and hide and just do it because I don't want to handle people not liking me. And for me, it was like, now it's like, no, how am I going to handle it when it happens? How am I going to handle it when somebody says that the Institute is stupid? Yes, that's happened. How am I going to handle it when somebody says what you are trying to do in this world is not necessary? Yes, that's happened. How am I going to handle when I really, really put a lot of effort and energy and time and hope into something and it doesn't go the way I'm expecting it? How am I going to look at that? And for me, I've started looking at it as I'm going to get excited because I know that the more I fail, the closer I'm getting to what I want, the closer I'm getting to my goals. And I've actually made failure in the journey of taking these steps, I've reframed it as something that feels good, right? Ooh, another opportunity to learn. Ooh, another opportunity to try again. And that's probably kind of weird and a little masochistic, but it works. It really works. And I've started doing this with my kids too. With my kids, when they fail or they do something, like one of my kiddos is way better at math than their twin. And the other twin comes home and is like, yeah, I only got like a B. And I'm like, okay, show me what you got on your last test. Like they do pre-test, post-test. I'm like, let's look at your pre-test, post-test. I'm like, your pre-test was an F and your post-test was a C. Look at this. That is 50% improvement. You went from a 50% to a 75%. So you improved your score by like 50%. That is huge, my love. Right? Okay, let's try again. Or we try an art project and it doesn't work. Or my son plays baseball and he's learning how to use a new bat. And he went from like a batting average of 400 to a batting average of 150 when we go to the cages. He, instead of hitting every 4 out of 10 balls, he's hitting every 1 or 2 because he's learning how to use a new bat. It's heavier, it's longer. And so like, if he's just like, oh, well, I can't do this, let me stick with the smaller bat. Well, the problem with that is that he's going to hit 400 right now. And as he gets bigger, he's not going to be able to put weight behind the ball. And as the kids in the outfield and the infield get stronger and faster, they're going to be able to pick up his hits more quickly and his batting average is going to go down. So him moving up to that bigger bat is important. He's going to fail for a while, and framing that for him so that that's expected and to get excited around that because it means that he's growing and he's trying and he's changing. Like that is the mentality that we are trying to give our kids. We get excited when they fail. So the last piece, and this is the piece that y'all are going to be like, ooh, if you haven't already done that yet. Are you willing to look like a fool? Are you willing to look like a fool? Are you willing to have the worst case scenario happen? For most people, the worst case scenario is looking like a fool. But for a lot of people, when I'm like, okay, you want to try this thing, and it's definitely out of the range of what you've done to this point. Okay. What's the worst thing that could happen? Well, I could end up getting divorced if I'm trying to improve my relationship or I'm trying to start communicating my desires more. I could end up getting divorced. I could end up in a custody battle. I could, in my business, I could go bankrupt. I could not be able to pay my bills. I could not be able to pay my team. I could not have this happen. And when we get down to it, when they get into their worst case scenarios of like, this is the worst thing that could happen, short of death, which by the way, if you die, you don't have to worry about it anymore. I know that's kind of morbid, and that's something I have to remind myself of if there is something that I am trying that could legitimately kill me, let me say it this way. The likelihood that I am trying something that could legitimately kill me is so low. And also, do you know how many people die doing nothing? I'm going to say that again. Do you know how many people die from taking no risks at all? So knowing that life has a 100% mortality rate, would I rather die taking risks that brought me closer to what I really, really wanted? Would I rather die making moves that felt good for me to make? Or would I rather die not taking risks and doing nothing? So Worst case scenario for me is not dying taking a risk and failing. Worst case scenario for me is dying not taking risks and not going after what I want and not, sucking the juice out of all of that life has to bring. That's worst case scenario, right? Everything else is handleable, can be handled. Everything else can be handled. Go back to point 4. How are you going to handle it when it happens, right? But the biggest thing that a lot of people don't realize is the worst case scenario for them is not that they're going to die. It's not that they're, going to fail. It's that they're going to look stupid or foolish. And this goes back to one of the beginning points of what are you making it mean? When I really get deep down with my clients around why they are not doing things that they want to do, it is usually because they are afraid they're going to look stupid or they're going to disappoint someone. And that goes back to that fear of not being loved, not being accepted, not being safe psychologically. So when my clients say, yep, I'm willing to look stupid. I'm willing to look like a fool. I'm willing to have people be like, what the heck is she doing? And I'm not saying this to you lightly. I am somebody that has done a lot of things that people have been like, what the heck are you doing? Why are you doing this? This is dumb. And I would say that the best things in my life, the best things in my life are the things that people are like, what the heck are you doing? You're leaving a 12 plus year career at a top academic healthcare system, being paid what physicians are paid, overtime, making your own schedule, having making such a difference in people's lives. You got a doctorate in nursing, Lee. What are you doing? Why are you leaving? You're going to start your own business? Oh, you're going to burn down 80% of your business and start an institute in its place? You're going to get rid of 80% of your income and just take that leap of faith and trust that you can handle whatever happens, knowing that you're the sole income earner in this home at that time? This is what you're going to do? And so many people around me, as I've made moves in my life, have been like, you're being a fool. You're not thinking this through. You're not being smart about this. And at times I wasn't. Sometimes I was impulsive. Sometimes I didn't have all the information. Sometimes I was young. And the thing is that when I made those moves though, I learned. And now at the ripe old age of 36, right? A double adult, 18 times 2. I had my first childhood and then I've had my second 18 years. And in those second 18 years, what I have done is made so many mistakes in adulthood that now I know when my intuition is like, this is the path you're supposed to take. And so often my intuition tells me to do things that don't make sense on paper, that look like failures to other people. And to bring this back full circle to what I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast about this launch. At first I was like, oh, well, this launch it's not a failure by any means because, it's still a multi-5-figure launch. We've got lots of new people in. We get to run this program again. I love running this program. I'm so excited to do this. There's so much goodness that came out of this launch. And we had all of these launches planned, 16 launches planned for 2023. And nearing the end of this launch, because it's been going on since November, my intuition was like, slow down. I know you wanted to pop right into this brand new thing that you were going to offer. No, stop, get still, get quiet, get off social media, go turn internal. There's something else that's coming. And if you don't make space for it, you're going to have a problem. Now, in my brain, right? In my logical brain, that made no sense. It was like, no, we have to, we thought that this launch was going to bring in more money. So we need to do X, Y, and Z and then, and then I realized that's my ego. My ego is going, you have to make this much in this amount. I've made $30,000 in a day, cash. I know that things can happen in an instant. And so what the real failure would have been for me to be like, no, if you stop right now and this doesn't work, you're going to look stupid. So keep going. you're going to have to eat crow. You're going to have to go tell your team like, oh, we got to cut back hours. So don't do this because you need to save face. You need to not look like a fool. You need to not disappoint people. And I know now at this point when my intuition is like, stop, pause, that is where the best ideas and the abundance and the goodness comes from. That's how the Institute was born. That's how I decided to leave my job. That's how a lot of really good things in my life have happened. And so I'm even publicly talking about this and willing to look like a fool if this decision to chill out for a minute and pause and figure out what our next move is from a launch perspective, if that doesn't quote unquote work out. And going back to point 3 of getting irrationally irrational, it's going to work out because it always does. Because I don't see failure, a single failure, as a stopping point. I get excited about mistakes. I get excited about the lessons I get to learn from them. All that being said, I have no idea what we're offering next. I think it's our entrepreneurial mini mind. So if you're an entrepreneur who wants to learn how to trust your own intuition and stop bringing drama into your drama, yes, drama, also trauma, drama and trauma into your business and create a business model that feels really good for you and also really good for your clients, and knowing when you're supposed to pivot and practicing making mistakes in community with other people who are going to get so excited for you and who are going to help you fail forward and help you not make failure mean something about who you are as a person. So I think that's the thing that's coming next. That's what's on our schedule to start at the end of February. So if you're an entrepreneur listening to this and you're like, oh, yes, please. Yes, I want to learn how to fail forward. Then shoot me a message. We'll get you in. And there might be something else that pops up in between because that's what I don't know what I'm making space for. I don't know what we're making space for. Hubby's making a lot of moves right now too. So maybe I'm making space for him to do something. And if I pack my stuff in, then I can't support him. So who knows? I'll let you know when I do. And just invitation, if you are someone who's starting to get nudges or inklings of moving that feel intuitive, to start listening to those and leaning into those more. Because if you are willing to look like a fool and you are willing to keep doing what is necessary to follow your own genius, you will end up looking like a genius at some point. Think about all of the great people that we celebrate now. How often we told them that they were fools at the beginning. Almost every great innovator, inventor, pioneer in their respective fields, people thought they were nuts. People thought that they were fools. And now we're like, oh, they're amazing. So that's all I have for you today. I love you all. Go out there, fail early, fail often, set some big goals, go after them, learn from them, get a mentor. We're here to mentor you if you desire that, or just like a cheerleader to support you at times. Get help deciphering your failures and learning how to fail forward, and cut yourself some slack, give yourself some compassion, and yeah, go fail. Love you all. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Invitation to head to our show notes to check out the offers and connections we mentioned. Or you can just head straight over to institutefortrauma.com and hop in our email list so that you never miss any of the cool things that we're doing over at the Institute. Invitation to be well and to take care of yourself this week, and we'll see you next time.